but with a territory that allows you to see the Dali Museum in 2 hours. Also, these attributes that we have to focus on, and these are the attributes that we have to market to put our policies around them. And something which is important is to use digitation. This is to use digital tools in order to manage tourism. You see, Barcelona, as it has happened to other destinations that are mature, Barcelona has had an exponential growth. If you allow me, Barcelona is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I think you shall agree with me, right? But it is true that as all destinations that are successful and mature destinations, we've been concerned more about their promotion than promotion and management. Now we are in a different stage. We're in the stage of promotion and management, and digital tools will help us so that whenever a visitor comes to Barcelona, the visitor will be automatically connected to a tool that will tell the visitor how many people are there in any attractive place, or the safety measures, whether there's a queue, and will offer alternatives in case there's a queue or a line. Will give alternatives, or it will tell the tourists to go visit later on. And the city will accomplish two things. First, to give a better service to visitors, and in the second place, to give better quality of life to residents, because we will avoid long lines, we will avoid high occupancy of public spaces, and we kill two birds with one stone, right?
Well, I actually went on my honeymoon to Barcelona a while ago, and
¿Y sigue casado?
Are you still married?
2 children later, yes. But the question I would have had before choosing it is, after reading all these articles about over-tourism, and this gets back to our question of confidence, are you going to put the measures that you're making into the marketing? Are you going to be basically letting travelers know, because I'm not sure I would have chosen it, as if with all the news about how crowded it is, I'm not sure I would have chosen it. Are you going to make that part of your messaging, your marketing messaging, that this is going to be a different Barcelona?
Sí.
Yes, you're talking about the news in 2019 that ended in 2019, because 2020 everything finished. But I was telling you that this year we have used the year of the pandemic to rethink what we wanted as a city. We have rethought where we want to go. Let me give you an example. I just came back from Russia. Barcelona has been the first city of all Europe that has known how to do promotion, the first city that does good promotion. Russia has not given visas to anyone but to tourists from Barcelona in the last year. We went to Russia last week, but because we have a strategy, we knew very well that now we have the light at the end of the tunnel, which is the vaccines and the green passport. And we destinations, we need to start doing promotion, not one day earlier. We need to go and tell markets how our destination is like, the measures we have adopted, the protocols we will be implemented. So the trip that Barcelona Tourism made to Russia, we presented the new Barcelona in Russia, a new Barcelona. I am telling you that we are the ones that are positioning our attributes. We are controlling our narration, our narrative. We don't want to tell the number of people that come. That's not what matters. But as I said, there are destinations. Barcelona and Venice are always compared. You know why? You know why? Because there are cities in the world, I can tell you many more famous cities, for example, that have a larger density than the density in Venice and Barcelona, that have tourism in a very little space. Therefore, all visitors gather in the same areas. But you can go to any city in the United States or from any other country or Asian city You can go there, and depending on the season of the year, you cannot even cross the street because everything is so crowded. But that happens in specific places because the densities of those destinations are much bigger than the densities in Barcelona. So we are working on that. We have come up with new strategic lines. And I invite you all because what matters is for you to go and see it yourself, right? So I hope you will be coming to Barcelona. Not all at the same time, of course, but please come to Barcelona. We will there waiting for you with open arms so that you can see that Barcelona will be a sustainable Barcelona, a Barcelona where we'll have the warmth of all the people, of the locals, and that locals want tourists to come and to feel comfortable and safe.
Enrique, you with your tours are all around, this worldwide is in your title. So you're seeing there's obviously some that are closed off, but of the ones that are opening, what are you seeing in terms of booking patterns that might give insight into where demand is greatest? Are there certain cities that really seem to be doing well? And what does that tell us about the traveler of the future?
Well, first of all, hello, good afternoon to everyone. Hello, Gloria. Congratulations for organizing this event in these strange times. Wonderful. And well, what we are seeing, the main trends we see from travelers that we've seen during the past 11 months of the pandemic and what we see for the future, I would summarize them in 4 of them actually. We see travelers, the main concern today about technology and sustainability, that those trends, we see them as we were working of them in the pre-COVID times, no? But then there are other 2 trends. Talking about technology, the travelers, we see that they demand very digital travel experience. No? They want a contactless and seatless travel journey, starting from the beginning, from the research to the booking to the redemption. When they leave home, they want to have that journey, that travel experience in the transfer, the planes or the boats. When they arrive in the destination, they want to have that digital experience. As a matter of fact, we've been working really hard during these times and since pre-COVID in this, and then we developed a QR code technology that allows our customers not only to use our services without any contact, but also to add on into that QR code any other attractions, any other museums and activities in the city, so they can go and use it the same way just by scanning at the door. That avoids them actually for them to be in queues. That also help them to keep the social distance, and what is very important, allow us to track where they go around. So I think that development of technology, it's something that everyone in the industry has to embrace. I have to say that during this pandemic, people that were less tech savvy, they have embraced technology because they started to follow any news about the pandemic. They started to shop about it. So they're going to be more friendly to any technology that we put out there. No? If we talk about sustainability, as I said, it's something that we were seeing before, but now it has completely changed. The traveler, they see sustainability with a lot more into their travel plans, and they don't want just to demand destinations that they care about the sustainability of the destination, but also they want to use suppliers, they want to see attractions that they also care about this sustainability. They feel part of it. As a matter of fact, I think that today, like Matthew, I believe he said before, Sustainability should not be an annex, appendix in a company. From my point of view, it should be in the center of the strategy of development of the company. That's really important today. Another of the trends that we are seeing is the development or the new demand that we are seeing, no? The evolution of the demand. Mainly during those months, during this month, we've seen travelers not going very far from home, traveling mainly in their own country, domestically, and we have even seen in some locations, some destinations where we operate, citizens, let's say, traveling or doing tourism in their own cities, which is very important because that's something that before it was very difficult to see. Actually, when we realized that people were tending to do that, we created some packages, we bundled some product with other monuments, museums, and all that, and we marketed it just to the citizens, the local of that destination. And the feedback, the products were very successful, and the feedback that we got from them, that it was very important, they were telling us that they learned a lot more about their culture, their heritage, and everything, because they always think about traveling and doing tourism outside. So I believe that that was really important. No? Also, we can see that people, they want to travel fewer trips, but they want longer stays. I think they are looking for unique experiences. They want to be doing less trips, but in those trips, they want to take most of it. You know? Also, we have seen, well, nomad travel. We see every day more people, since the way of working have changed so much. People working from home, they can work from, need to go to the office. So we have seen an increase of people coming to the destination, and they come there not for a short stay. They will be there for months, you know? And I think that's something that it will remain, because it's going to be very difficult for companies to bring back everyone, you know? They realize that they can work like that, so that will stay also. And then the fourth trend, really important, the health and hygiene requirements and demand that we are getting from customers, from travelers. It's key. It has become a paramount in the industry. I believe that actually WTTC has done a great job with the protocol, with the safe travel stamp. And that's something that is giving a lot of confidence to the travelers. But something that the public sector and the private sector need to have in mind, need to be very careful, is that we need to find the balance in between those health and hygiene protocols and the customer experience, okay? It's very important that those protocols, they cannot affect the customer experience, because then travelers will stop traveling, you know? And we have seen that already. Some example, for example, when countries announce the quarantines on arrival and return and all that, so it really hurt. It really hurt the industry, because people will stop traveling. People, the booking engine, it completely stopped, no? But we've seen also some good example, like last Christmas, right before Christmas, that I traveled to Dubai when they opened the corridor in between UK and Dubai. We could see with a very easy way to enter into the country with a PCR. If you didn't bring it to you, they will do it right away in the airport. You will go to the hotel and wait for the result. So that was a very good experience for all travelers. As a matter of fact, I believe that Dubai went up to 80% of the numbers that they had in 2019. So we have to take in consideration that we need to keep always the balance in between the health and hygiene protocols and the customer experience.
Thank you, Enrique. And Dan, you give a different sort of insight into what's on travelers' mind, because your program is kind of part insurance, part assistance, But when people call your call centers and are curious about it, what are they curious to know? What are the questions that they still are unsure about that they feel you might be able to help? What are those concerns?
Well, thank you, Arnie. You know, there really are two things, I think, that need to be solved for demand to really return. But before I get into that, I just think we all have to keep in mind that the traveler and travelers are incredibly resilient. And people right now want to travel more than they've ever wanted to travel in modern history. So there is an enormous amount of pent-up demand, and it just needs to be given the opportunity to express itself. And if we do two things, we need to remove fear from the equation, and we need to remove uncertainty. And those are two related but different things. So we're about to enter an environment where the majority of, for instance, in the United States, of people are vaccinated. You know, we're at 230 million people have received at least one shot, nearly 100 million, a little over actually 100 million are fully vaccinated at this point. The United States is going to be done vaccinating here in the next 4 to 6 weeks, which will be great. So we'll have 330 million travelers from the U.S. who are ready to go again. So you just have to remember that your customer at that point is going to be a vaccinated individual. But when you talk about removing fear, so you need to remove the fear that people are going to actually get the disease and then have potentially an adverse outcome. So the second part of that is, well, if I do get sick or I do have a problem somewhere, how do I get out? How do I get home? I mean, that's the natural human instinct. How do I get to the place that's most comfortable to me where I can get the care that I need? And so, you know, global rescue companies like ours, we solve those problems for people. We remove that, that uncertainty and that fear. But what we can't do, to the second part of what I said, is to remove the uncertainty of the travel experience, right? That's beyond certainly anyone in the private sector's control. That goes to governments to set, reasonable rules regarding how travel can occur. And if we can get some level of coordination among governments so that when travelers start to book that trip or start talking about it, they don't, get to the screen that then shows them what they need to do in order to actually get from point A to point B. I mean, it's hard enough if you're an individual. Now imagine, if you're a family with young children, it becomes very, very challenging. So you have to remove that uncertainty, and you have to guarantee them that they're not going to get stuck in quarantine somewhere for some long period of time. Again, as an individual adult, unpleasant but bearable. If you have young children and you're traveling, voluntarily, who would want to subject themselves to that and your children to that? Most families would not. So we need to remove that from the equation. And again, the private sector, companies like ours, we can solve that. We can go in, we can evacuate people, we can put them on private jets, we can get them home, we can move them if they're sick, we put them on medevac aircraft, we can do all those things. But we can only do it within the constraints that are elaborated and dictated by the government environments in which we operate. So if we can do those two things, I will guarantee you that demand will come surging back.
Okay, well, Fernando, this is a perfect segue to you. So you were present during the discussions, during the debates in February around this. Europe was notoriously unable to coordinate border openings. So this is tremendous. What was the breakthrough? What was it that the tourism-dependent countries said to those who said, I've got other priorities? What was it that maybe others can benefit from knowing? What are the magic words to get people to say, okay, we're going to do this, let's welcome vaccinated travelers?
Thank you, Arnie, and thank you, WTTC, for bringing us together again. Thank you, Gloria. Well, I think it was a natural debate. I've been listening some conversation along these days, and we realized that since the beginning, this is a health crisis. We really need to realize that the beginning of this was a virus, which is true. The principal problem was in terms of mobility and travel and tourism sector, but it was a crisis related with health. So it is natural that since the beginning it was It was a balanced conversation between health authorities and those who realize that we have enough means to start recuperating the activity. So what happened in February was that, okay, we did then have the vaccines, and we start seeing that there were countries that tourism, it was not really as important as for Spain or other countries. And we start realizing that we really need to push forward the debate. And since we do have vaccines...
Which were the countries that were pushing this agenda?
Well, the ones that we really understand that tourism is an important part of our GDP. I mean, it was Spain, Portugal, Greece, Italy. We were the ones realizing that mobility of persons, not only of goods, but of persons, it was the right time to move forward and try to put in place all the means to make it happen, because we do have vaccines, and that's a completely different scheme from last summer. I think when someone says we are at the same position of last summer, I don't agree. I think we are in a completely different situation, and we were then in February. So it was time to put in place means to give certainty, as Dan said. I think the best thing that governments right now can provide to travelers is certainty, give the proper information and the security that they can travel and they can come back to the countries knowing what can they expect. And in those terms, in the European Union, we put in place a system, because of that discussion on late February, that provides us with a digital certificate. Digital certificate is not a magical wand, it's just certainty. I mean, what we are providing travelers is a mean of security in the terms of how to organize their travel. So they know that if they're vaccinated, they do a test, or they're immunized, they can travel. And what we do need to put in place now is this certificate to start negotiating with third countries. Yesterday news was excellent, because we realized that US citizens which are vaccinated can go to the European Union. And I think this kind of news are going to be consistent along the way. Spain is going to be ready in June to use this digital certificate. We are doing a pilot program on May in all our 46 airports. So we are going to give all travelers this certainty. Spain is going to be ready in June to tell all travelers worldwide that you can visit us with all these means of certainty.
That's wonderful. What's unusual, I guess, on the world stage is that this was done, it was multilateral within Europe, but unilateral to the rest of the world. Do you expect reciprocity? I'm going to blow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you going to expect that other countries are going to likewise say vaccinated travelers from Europe are welcome?
Well, I think this has to come in a natural way, since we are accepting a common standard and standards also. Dan mentioned it. This is very important to all of us. It is of no use that we open only one side of the equation. I mean, if we only use this certificate, but if you come back to your country and the restriction is they're not certain, they could change from one day to another. This is not going to help tourism. So what we are expecting with our negotiations between the EU and third countries is that since we have done this system, which is quite, I have to say, is quite simple in its use, and we are not interested on data on the users. I mean, what we want is that someone that has the vaccination certificate that is related with their identity, and they can prove that there is no risk in their travel. But when they're coming back to the country, this has to have a kind of reciprocity, as you mentioned.
Yes, thank you, reciprocity. So, Gibran, you are the only one on this panel who actually has experience with travelers for any length of time since Mexico has been open. What do you think are the 3 factors that are the key to rebuilding confidence from what you've noticed in terms of the travelers who've come to Mexico?
Well, thanks, Arnie. This is one of the largest hotels in the world, and when we decided to open the chain, we weren't sure if we should open the small hotels rather than large hotels, because we didn't know if the clients were going to decide to stay in a crowded property rather than a small one. So what we did in the beginning was to create a very clear video of the protocols that we're going to be following. This was in June, almost a year from now. And I can tell you that in our website, the protocol video, the Purely Palace, was much more visited than the promotions section of the webpage. People care much more about the health and safety and protocols rather than a discounting price, which, by the way, we didn't discount because people won't travel for a discount. If they're afraid of their health, they don't care if you give it for free. So this was very important to have a clear communication. And I also think that a very organized industry, locally or nationally, give one sole message on how our protocols being followed by destination, on the airport, in different hotels. And I think in Quintana Roo and in Los Cabos, I can tell you that the industry was very well organized in terms of having the same protocols per se. And this created a very big confidence in the client, because one of the problems that we have seen is that the messages to travel are not clear. Do I need a PCR test, an antigen test to go in, to go back 3 days, 4 days? What happens if I am vaccinated? What happens if I'm not? So a clear communication is very important. I'm glad Spain is doing that. I think it's very intelligent. And also the word of mouth, it's clue. I can do a survey today, and hopefully all of you will be feeling very safe on being here. And what difference is it to be in a supermarket grabbing a tomato with somebody that has not been tested to grab a tomato, and then you come and grab the same fruit? What's the difference between that and going on a trip? Maybe the only thing and the only process that could be or could make the client be nervous is the airplane. I believe that the vaccinated people should have a green light, and the non-vaccinated people should get a 10-minute quick test before getting on a flight, independently if it's on a way in or out, because you're sitting next to a guy that is sneezing for 9 hours, and your brain will make you sick, even if he doesn't have COVID. So I believe that confidence is coming. I can tell you from our sales that the clients want to travel. Just last week, and Alex mentioned it in his panel, last week we sold 50% more year. We have seen it from the U.S. The U.S. clientele to Quintana Roo, it's growing up to a point that it's about to surpass travelers from January and February from make sure that enjoy their lives, and I believe also the travel is something that has taken relevancy in terms of why do I want a new pair of shoes or a new watch? I'd rather experience more than start spending in material things.
Okay. So thank you. I've got 41 seconds and a message saying please start wrapping up in one question. Gibran, how can you motivate someone to do meetings again? Can you answer in 30 seconds? You've got a lot of meeting space.
We don't need to motivate because the sales are there. They're picking up. They're picking up from September and towards the first Q of the year. And I can tell you that last week we closed 9 groups of 3,500 rooms for 6 nights each, where we're going to be a full buyout. And when this company that purchased the rooms from us, they sold these events, I cannot give more details, in 4 minutes.
Amazing.
People are desperate to travel.
Amazing. And you did well on the timing. Thank you, panel.
So what we heard here was that travel will come roaring back. We're seeing it here at the Moon Palace Resorts already. If Airbnb.
Welcome to this hot seat on the travel of the future with Airbnb's CEO and co-founder, Brian Chesky. I'm Glenda McNeil, President of Strategic Partnerships at American Express and WTTC Executive Committee member. I'm thrilled to be here to have this discussion. This year has been an interesting year and left many of us yearning for travel. And this desire has us making our wish list for future travel, redefining what we want out of a trip and where we want to go. Today with Brian, who recently took Airbnb public, and will unpack what the traveler of the future will want out of travel and their travel providers. How COVID-19 has permanently changed their demands and how the sector can build towards a more resilient future. What we've seen at American Express is a strong pent-up demand for travel focused on safety, sustainability, and diversity. This provides a great opportunity to build on this momentum and build back better as travel and tourism recovers. We should make our recovery both sustainable and inclusive. So we're going to dig in now with Brian. First question, Brian. From your experience leading Airbnb this past year, what has been the biggest effect of COVID-19 now?
I think that we yearn for what's taken away from us. What's been taken away from us? Well, travel has, but something probably even bigger, human connection. And so we surveyed travelers all over the world, and they tell us they miss traveling, but they don't miss all types of traveling. They don't miss business travel generally, and they don't miss mass travel, standing in line to get their selfies in front of landmarks, getting on double-decker buses at tourist districts. What they miss are spending time with their family and friends. That's the kind of travel they want. And so I think that mass travel, to some degree, to meaningful travel, which can happen anywhere.
I agree with you. I think meaningful travel and traveling with a purpose really rings true in what we're seeing as well at American Express. Consumers are becoming more conscious travelers. They're being more aware of travel companies aligned with their values and the journey to destinations where they can have a positive impact on the communities. So next question is, in the last year, it's brought about a huge shift in travel, in particular to areas outside of city centers. What are you most excited about? And where do you think the industry is most challenged?
Yeah, I mean, this is in the same destinations. I think what people discovered last year was that they can travel anywhere, because a lot of people weren't flying, they weren't able to cross borders, they weren't able to go to conventions, they weren't able to go to crowded districts. So what do? They got in their cars, typically in a lot of countries, and they traveled to cities they could get to, or destinations with a tank of gas. And a lot of the places they went to weren't big cities, there were communities. So the way I think about travel is I think it's going from people traveling to 20 destinations to people traveling everywhere. 100,000 communities all over the world. And I think in particular, rural travel is a huge trend. I think people are getting reconnected with the land, reconnected with their original home, which is nature. And I think, by the way, this is great for sustainability, because if you want to help, I think, contribute towards creating a more sustainable world, you have to kind of get back to the source. And this would be rural communities, national parks. And to give you one example of what we're doing, today we're announcing that we now have agreements with more than 100 destinations around the world to support tourism recovery. And we have a focus on rural travel. To give you 3 examples, we just did a partnership with the French Association for Rural Mayors. And so we are partnering, there's 16 mayors of rural communities that we're helping drive tourism to. I remember meeting, I think, the former minister of tourism in France a number of years ago, and they said, we don't need more people going to Paris, we need more people going to other parts of France. That's one example. We did a partnership with the Tourism Authority of economics to many more towns and communities all over the world. And I think this is a revolution in travel. This is not a small thing. This, I think, is a revolution that will rival, modern aviation and the modern hotel industry and other changes. When suddenly people can travel anywhere, I think it really fundamentally alters the way we move, the way we live, and the way we travel.
I think so many people for so many years really thought about travel as something exotic and extravagant. And now I think the discovery and just baseline experience is making a difference. Learning about the people who live there, those are all things that I think resonate. And it's fascinating to kind of hear the shifts that you're seeing in traveler preference, because it's also something that we're hearing about as we talk to our card members. When thinking about people and travel behavior and the purpose for travel, what has changed in perceptions of travel by demographic? And are you seeing differences according to age, region, or even reason for travel?
We've done a lot of surveys, and we have not seen a major change in demographic, in the sense that they're telling us they want to travel. And it seems to not be limited to any economic price point. You'd think in a recession, people in the lower economic bracket would not want to travel. Actually, even people making a median income below, the average American median income in the United States still want to travel. The majority of them are telling us they want to travel. Again, though, I think what they're saying is we want to travel to connect. Human history. It's a forced isolation. It's unnatural. And I think what people are yearning for, you said pent-up demand. It's not just pent-up demand to travel, it's pent-up demand to connect. And I think that is ultimately the purpose of travel. What's the why we're traveling and who we're with? I think that's a major shift. And I think traveling is going to start blurring with living. I think this idea that we take a 1 to 2 day business trip, or we do a once-a-year vacation, is old-fashioned and outdated. That's not the world we live in anymore. I think we now live in a world where people can work from home on their laptop. It means they can work via Zoom anywhere. And then that means they're going to be more flexible. That means many people are going to say, I want to kind of move around. I want to live in different places. I want to travel for a month, not a week. Suddenly they want to assimilate in the places they go. They don't want to feel like outsiders. Who wants to be an outsider for a month if they're in a location? This is a huge transformation in travel. And I think it's quite exciting. This is hugely exciting. What an exciting time to be in this industry.
No, it's quite exciting. And I think the idea that work will change. Do exactly what you're describing, which is to set up shop for a month or 2 months or 3 months and really get a sense of what it's like to experience a different place in a different community. And I think we're seeing a lot of that in terms of people's planning and where they're trying to go. One of the things we saw in our research that speaks to how consumers are spending is that they're planning to spend more than they would in previous, right? So whether it's more trips or longer trips, people are saying, I've got enough money that I want to be able to really go and do something that I'm excited about. So while some behaviors and trends will likely revert back to the way they were pre-COVID, what shifts do you think will be more permanent, and what will define the traveler of the future? Because to your point, they're not the same anymore.
Yeah, I think most things won't be the same, from business travel to leisure travel. As you can work from home, you don't need to travel for business. Now it means you're stuck in your home more. So you might actually be more likely to want to travel and get out for leisure. Business travel that does come back is going to be a different type of business travel, probably. For example, if people, the majority of CEOs seem to have said that when the world reopens, they're going to go to a hybrid workforce, meaning they're not going to be purely remote or purely in hybrid workforce means a world of flexibility. So people might not live in where the headquarters is. If that happens, let's say your headquarters like Amex is in New York, maybe some employees might live in Ohio, but they're going to want to go back to headquarters maybe once a quarter for a week. So you're going to have a different kind of hub and spoke business travel. That's not the 1-2 day meetings. They'll still exist, but you'll have a new kind of business travel. 20 people traveling to 20 cities is going to be people traveling to 20,000 cities. Traveling and living are blur together. Mass tourism will still exist, but again, it will give way to, I think, a more personal local type of travel. And the last thing is, I think traveling is going to be less ma'am and sir, concierges and people who don't truly. I think people want to feel like, and I know Amex does this, they want to feel like they're known. This is a very isolating period. Loneliness is pervading society. What people really want is a sense that they belong, they're valued, and people know who they are and they exist. And I think they're going to not want this just of their employers, not just of this of their family. They're going to want this when they travel because this is going to be a major part of their life. I think this is an exciting time for travel also because I think people will spend more money on travel. In other words, if you what are the most shared photos on Instagram, Facebook, and social media? They're often photos of travel. What are the most important events in your life? Your wedding, your honeymoon, your retirement, when you graduate college, what do you do in these moments? You travel. It is the ultimate experience. I think this is a big opportunity for us, but we got to, as an industry, make sure that we meet people where they are, and where they are is a different place than they were before the pandemic. They're at a place that's much more local, much more personal. Ultimately, all of us in travel, we're not really just in the business of travel. We're in the business of human connection. That's what people want, I think. They don't want to be alone in an isolated bubble when they're traveling.
I think what's exciting for brands who have built their business on experiences like American Express, like Airbnb, this resonates with us, right? Because people want to feel as though you know them. People want to feel a part of a community. So your point about belonging is a very important one, and one that we at American Express have spent years investing in. And, I think many companies also had to pivot to try and embrace that. So let's talk a little bit about not only meaningful travelers, but let's experiences. Let's shift a little bit to travelers wanting to travel with confidence and this whole notion of safety, particularly during this period. What should travel and tourism businesses be doing to build stronger and more meaningful relationships so that they can accelerate growth and restore travelers' confidence?
Well, I mean, clearly safety is really important, and I think that every company needs to think through, like, what are you doing to restore confidence? And you can have three choices: do less than is expected of you, what's expected of you, or more than is expected of you. You rarely get credit in life when you do anything less than is more than expected, because then it's not noticed. We worked last year with a I think it's kind of like that's like the base of Maslow's pyramid, is we need to make sure people feel safe when they travel. But again, people don't travel to be safe. They travel for more than that. So that's only the price of admission. But again, I think that what we really need to do to restore confidence is also make sure people feel like, you know, they're known, they're valued, and we have a real relationship with them. I think relationships are going to be
right? The amount of people who chose Airbnb during that time for those reasons, particularly. What can the sector do in the medium to long term to build in resilience into the industry and to really make sure that it thrives, particularly after what we've been through?
Well, I would say a couple of things. Number one, in order to be resilient, to be relevant to what people want. So I think it's very important that none of us expect the world to ever be like 2019. I really think we should let go of the world before last. It's not scary as long as we and more services will get automated, like self-driving cars will replace, I think, a lot of taxi fleets and ride sharing. And so the last thing that's going to get automated is like service with heart. You know, not what will future-proof a company, because that's what people are going to want. And I also think not putting all your eggs in one basket, so to speak, one destination. People aren't just going to all go to one city. You know, Vegas will come billion. I think for a local community, it's really important that they highlight what makes them different. Not every place has, you know, a landmark like the Eiffel Tower, but that's okay, because now we're in a great equalizer. Because I would argue people everywhere are equally interesting. And so long as travel is about connection, suddenly everyone is on the same footing as Paris.
Well, Brian, you've given some great insight, and I think you've noted some really great advice. I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to close on that one. I want to thank you for sitting in the hot seat today. We're now over a year into this pandemic, so our observations that growing pent-up demand and shifts in travel preference for flexibility, increased safety and cleanliness measures, and longer stays can serve as signals that the traveler of the future will be on the road again. They will be critical to the recovery of our global and local economies. Thank you so much for joining us, and that concludes our session. Thank you.
Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely.
And thank you to Glenda for a really thought-provoking interview, and for Brian for telling us, forget about 2019, we're just going to lean into the future, which is what we're going to be talking about in the next set of panels. This is time now for our second set of strategic insights. As we come through this recovery. So we're going to have simultaneous panels here on the stage. We will be discussing safe and seamless travel. This is something that WTTC has been leaning into for more than a decade, how we use technology to have the easiest trip that people possibly can have, and it even has more resonance now that we talk about a post-COVID world. But meanwhile, if you're on the WTTC platform viewing this conference, you can actually stay here in the main auditorium, or you can go and visit the video on demand room now or anytime later to focus the 3 other sessions. All 3 of them are going to be great, and the one here in the room is going to be fabulous. So we have speakers including Kim Day, Ted Balistreri, Mark Hoplamazian, Paul Griffiths, Gilda Perez Alvarado, Carolyn Batetta, Minister Lemoyne, Chris Thompson, Andrea Grisdale, and Rob Torres of Google, just to name a few. You can't watch them all at once, but we really do urge you when you leave this room to try to go look at those on the platform, because there's just great content in all of them. Now, we're going to bring Peter Greenberg back to the stage to moderate this panel, and he's going to bring his panelists up. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Kathleen. We're talking about, is my mic on? Yes, okay. We're talking about safe and seamless travel, not a new concept, but one that has importance beyond just the pandemic. We have a great panel today from different aspects of the travel industry, hotels, airports, new technology in terms of clearance. So please welcome my panelists. They're going to walk out on the stage now. Sean Donohue, the CEO of the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Sean. Kelly Craighead, the CEO of CLIA. Kelly, where are you? You're just coming up. You can applaud, that's okay. Jose Ricardo Botello, the CEO of Alta, and I'll explain what that is when he gets up here. Here he comes. Ewald, where are you? From the Bakuta and Tara Resort in Aruba. A very interesting story to tell. Clear. Are you coming up? There you go. Come on up, guys. I'm going to sit over there. You know, when Brian Chesky was talking about human connection, you guys are all about also the process of connection and the technical aspects of it as well. Yesterday in our Global Leaders Dialogue, we were talking about the process of connection as well. We're talking about airlift and airports. And one of the things that we discussed was that before 9/11, airports were not really developed or designed or capable of dealing with the security needs post 9/11 in a physical way and then in a technical way. And then the question becomes now, are they developed and designed for dealing with a public health issue like the pandemic? I don't know if you've had the same experience that I have, but I don't have a problem getting on a plane today. I know that their air circulation systems are fabulous. They take out more than 99.4% of the particulates and the bacteria. So for me, that's not an issue. Friends are saying to me, yeah, but what do you do about the airport? What's going on about the airport? And what's interesting about that is Sean Donohue, who's the CEO of DFW, which, by the way, is now the largest, biggest airport in the United States, surpassing Atlanta. You were baking some technology into the system before the pandemic.
We were, Peter, and thanks for teeing that up, and good afternoon, everybody. We have been on a journey at DFW for about 3 years, working with many partners on biometrics. We believe biometrics gives us, and most importantly, provides our customers facilitation benefits that have now become almost an imperative as we recover from the pandemic. And let me give you a couple examples. In working with U.S. Customs and Border Patrol, we now have technology. If you arrive on an international flight at DFW, the biometrics actually is your boarding document. It's your arrival document. You don't have to show your passport when you go through immigrations and customs. It's always good to have it, obviously, but that becomes the mechanism to clear you through immigrations and customs. For about 2 years, we've been using biometrics to board all of our international flights. You don't have to give a boarding pass. You don't even have to use your mobile boarding pass. And now we're testing when customers check in. As we all know, it's very easy to get a mobile boarding pass, but we are testing technology using biometrics that allows you to self-check your bag without any involvement from an airline employee. So those type of technologies, Peter, were always on our radar screen. We were starting to work with them, but as I said, now they've become an absolute priority.
Of course, you can call me old school, but I'm the kind of guy that every time I see a kiosk, I run, because I like the idea of human connection and conversation. Are you displacing that?
We're not trying to displace, because you're right, the human connection is still important, but what we've seen is the employees who are in these jobs where they have to facilitate now have the ability to be far more flexible. They don't have to be so robotic. They don't have to have their head down in a computer. It provides them the opportunity actually to engage even better with the customer. Now,
When the pandemic hit, we had one particular state in the United States, Hawaii, that closed down. America's only island state. They made it very difficult to get there. They were looking for some sort of a centralized set of standards to get people cleared to go. Obviously, one of the most popular destinations in the U.S. Andrew Wingrove from Clear, you guys came up with a process in partnership with the state.
Indeed.
To try to figure out a way to get people not only cleared to the first island, but maybe actually to all the islands.
Yes. First off, Peter, thanks for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. Clearing customers is nothing new to us, and creating frictionless and safe journeys is core to what we are at Clear.
And it's biometrics as well.
As a biometric company as well, yeah. And so clearing tens of millions of consumers through airports, we knew that when the pandemic hit, the next question would be, how do you raise that game with health insights? And so we've been working on a health pass credential for over a year. We have ambassadors and our customers at our lanes, and then we immediately put our heads down to building that health. So we've been working with the state of Hawaii now for about 6 months to create a red light, green light system that enables their Safe Travels portal to be that much easier for consumers. If y'all are not,
and by the way, earlier this afternoon I was talking to the
Yes.
Minister of Tourism of Greece. They've come up with a digital document.
Indeed.
Right? Yours is essentially a digital document.
Ours is a digital document as well, correct. But the most important thing is we're interoperable with their system, because they're not just measuring your health insights, but where you're staying for tracing purposes and the like. And so what we're working on with the state is not only to provide the red light, green light, but push into their system. And then what we're thinking about from there is how do we also create that interoperability to hotels, cruise lines, and more. Because if just look at checking in for yesterday here at this conference, where we created credentials when we checked in with our tests. And as you look forward, and as it's been noted with more of us being vaccinated, how do we share that credential seamlessly and safely?
Now, of course, in Hawaii, there's still a physical piece of equipment that's involved. It's that wristband, correct?
It's the wristband, correct.
Explain how that works.
Yeah, so for customers that are traveling to the state of Hawaii, they can either take a test from one of the 34 trusted testing partners that the state has established, or they can use the thousands of providers that are available through Clear. And from there, they link their testing provider account to Clear. We ask the testing provider, has this person taken a test within the prescribed period, which for Hawaii is 72 hours? Yes, it's within 72 hours. Yes, it's a PCR test.
going to come a time, whether it's the technology that Sean is using or the technology that you're using, where in the entire travel experience, once we get to a destination or even in our hometowns, we'll be using that technology to go to the dry cleaners, the grocery store, the movie theater, et cetera.
You bring up a great point. We're actually working with over 50 sports teams around the United States to power safe and easy access to the venues as well. Just this weekend, we had over 15,000 attendees. A sporting event in Florida that had over 10,000 attendees.
And in Florida and Texas, how many were wearing masks? I just had to ask.
I'm talking
you don't want to answer that question, do you?
Indeed. But the important thing to know is that we're building an interoperable platform that will work across a variety of industries. We believe, just like you, that it'll be incorporated in everyday life. And so our goal is not to create an all-encompassing health pass credential for every single venue, but one that creates an interoperable one that can plug and play, whether it be for cruise lines, for airline, and more.
Based on the standards of those entities.
Correct.
I got it.
And that seamless integration will enable you as a consumer, just like you log in with Google or log in with Facebook, to provide some credentials.
In his last piece was customer expectation. What are people going to be looking for as an authentic, genuine experience? And of course, the word sustainable. And that brings me up to Ewald here in the island of Aruba. I remember talking to your former prime minister about 4 or 5 years ago, who said to me that their goal was to be completely fossil fuel free for the entire island in just a couple of years. You're already doing that.
That is true. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real honor to be here, my illustrious colleagues. Yes, Aruba did announce that by 2020 we'll be 100% green, and that did not succeed. However, the present government is intending to eliminate fossil fuels by the year 2030.
I should also say, initially they were going to go solar.
Yes.
And that didn't exactly work out.
Well, they did part solar. They do about 5% of the local consumption solar, but they realized that to provide the whole island with panels with enough power would take half of the island. So they actually then switched to wind power, and they installed 12 turbines, and they're in the plan of adding another, I believe it's 24 or so. And that will then produce about 60 or 70% of the total consumption. And they're determined for various reasons. One is, of course, safety. The other one is foreign exchange. At this moment, the island is exporting millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase oil. And the wind and solar is free. And there are investors that are willing to put up the equipment, and you just purchase it at a discount from them. So we're looking forward to that happening.
Now, that's just on the island, but your resort itself.
Well, my resort, and again, there's a colleague here from Dallas Airport. We were the recipients of an award from the WTTC a few years ago, and then just recently became carbon neutral as a hotel in 2018. And it's been rewarding, and I see that the future and people look for sustainability, they look for health and safety, and the other thing they also will look forward to is a seamless travel, and we are combining all of these things in our resort. We actually provide our customers with a guilt-free vacation. And we put it in so many words. We say, look, staying at home and taking a car and driving, I don't know, to Disney World, your emissions are about 100% higher than if you would take a flight from New York to Aruba, spend a week in my hotel, which is super green, and then fly home, and you've spent half of that footprint that you would have spent in your car going to Florida. and Aruba is on the bandwagon to become as green as it can possibly be.
Well, right? And so here we are in a resort complex here with over 4,000 or nearly 4,000 rooms. Does anybody here even think when you flush the toilet, where does it go? Does anybody think that? Well, people started to think about that.
Yes.
I remember when ecotourism was becoming the buzzword, and they would put that little plastic card on your bed saying, please help us save the environment by not washing your towels. I used to laugh at the fact that the card was plastic, but forgetting that, they once gave me a tour of the hotel laundry. That's when I got it. When I saw the process of what it took to wash the towel, I said, count me in. So I guess the real question is, for all of us here, you know, what steps are you taking? Sean, you're doing that at the airport, I know, in terms of the environment. I mean, the toxic fluids that are contained at an airport are disposal, it's management, right?
It is, and it's how you dispose of the liquids. Like, think about glycol from de-icing airplanes. And we are extraordinarily careful. We work with partners, so we break down those components so they don't damage the environment. And it's very costly. It takes a lot of time. It's very complex. That's why, you know, we're the largest carbon neutral airport in the world, and we're proud of that. And who would have ever thought an airport in Texas would have that moniker?
But then that brings up the point is, as we emerge from COVID-19 and we have a new recognition or even a connection with public health issues that go beyond the virus, that becomes a marketing tool for you. That becomes a marketing tool for EWOL.
It does, and I would say, you know, my wife and I have 5 kids from 19 to 30. Young people pay attention to this. When we promote within the airport that we're carbon neutral, the young people get it. And they really do pay attention to that. And I actually believe older people like myself are starting to pay more attention to it as well. And we're not activists. We're practical about this at DFW. But we understand we've got a huge responsibility. And we've got a passion and a commitment, and we've got a wonderful team that has delivered on all of the goals and objectives we've set out there.
Now, at DFW, of course, is the consumer dynamic of moving people from A to B to C. I get that. But Jose, you're all about the rest of that aviation, equipment, planes, crews. What's changed for you?
With the COVID?
Yeah.
I would tell you, it changed a lot. First of all, thank you very much for this invitation, Gloria. It's a great pleasure to be here with you guys. And it's an honor for Alto to be here with you to explain a little bit about our process. Since the first beginning, I believe that it's important to understand what happened since the first beginning, since the first wave, because for the first time ever in 22 years work with government and private sector, I would say that was the first time that I saw actually all together in a table to try to find a way out. And that in our sector came under the umbrella of the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. So we've been there all together and try to find and try to avoid lose the connection in our region, in Latin American countries. That unfortunately we saw some quarantines or some unnecessary rules, and that had a huge impact in the sector. So still now we have been working and advocating with the government and try to say, okay, let's reopen, let's resume, because we have protocols, solid protocols, actually concrete, And if we are here today, it's because these protocols, they work it. So this is very important for us. And
Give me an example of some of the protocols that you initiated.
Since the first beginning, when you go to that, I mean, again, when you talk about this CART document that was made in the first wave of the COVID, the idea was, okay, if you go to the airport, which protocol do you have? So ACI was there to say to the government, okay, we can do this, this, and this. And also the government said, the whole government said, okay, it's okay if you go for this way. When you go to the cabin, what is the protocol? And here I would like to bring something that is very important to understand. Since the first beginning, Peter, we had a huge problem with misinformation. Like we felt that the people was a little bit afraid about the air in the cabin, but it's very important to understand that the air in the cabin is changed each 3 or 4 minutes. I mean, 100% of that, and especially with the filters that we have in the aircraft. So the protocol that was made for that, and the idea was to give confidence to the people to come back. And that's why all the time we have been saying that it's important to avoid quarantines and also to give some unnecessary tests at the arrival, because otherwise no one's gonna travel because you are afraid to come back to your country. So this is the process that we have been working a lot for since the first.
Many of my own listeners and viewers will repeat it to me that cruise ships are floating petri dishes. And yet, stage who can say something that nobody else can say, you can literally you can move your assets, and you've done it.
That's right.
Right? You've repositioned your ships to foreign ports, so you're not going to be sailing at this moment from any to U.S. port, and that includes the Bahamas, Bermuda, Greece, Iceland, the United Kingdom, Israel, St. Martin, and I'm probably running out of a few. So your challenge, of course, and everybody here has a challenge, right? But your challenge, of course, is to say, we're going to sail because we've met those standards, and then you've gone one step further, which is, it's one thing for Sean to say it's carbon neutral, that's great, right? But people are still asking about long lines at the airport. I get that, and I'm going to come back to that. But in your situation, most of your members now are requiring all crew to be vaccinated, all officers to be vaccinated, and all passengers to be vaccinated. So the question is, and it's a rhetorical question, so bear with me, if you have 100% vaccine compliance, have you now become the safest place to be?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you to Gloria and the whole team at WTTC for not only inviting me, but giving such a great opportunity for all of my cruise colleagues and port partners to be part of this, because it is an extreme in terms of the ability to move our assets is true. The other thing that's true that's important for governments to understand is just our unique ability to create a safe experience. from our partnerships with our air carriers, to the airports, to the ports and terminal operators, to the ability on the ships, and then, of course, partnership with the destinations themselves. And so one of our, I think, is to take that challenge and really be able to promote to the consumer the confidence that you'll have this kind of higher bar set than expectations of assurance, which our lawyer never likes me to say, but that assurance that you are going to be in a setting that has been enhanced completely as a result of all the learnings that have happened after this pandemic.
And so can you give me some examples where you've repositioned those ships, where that level of confidence has returned, not just in terms of passengers, but because we know there's a pent-up demand. We know that. I mean, for those of you who may not be aware, one cruise line a couple of weeks ago, I think it was Silver Sea, put on their grand expensive ticket on the ship was $74,000, and it sold out. So there is demand. But what about the concern of ports, concerns of individual governments,